What's going on, YouTube? This is SG1 Sports, and you're watching our college football channel. We continue with our schedule previews and projected records for 2023. The Alabama Crimson Tide are up next. Of course, a little bit of a new era here with no Bryce Young, no Will Anderson, but plenty of talent there as always. Before we look ahead to 2023, let's look back at 2022. Here was the schedule from 2022, and this was really, I would say it's the most difficult schedule Alabama has had in a long time. It was a tough schedule, especially if you look at who they played on the road. So they had a true road game in the non-conference against Texas. They were able to win that game. Arkansas was a pretty good team, especially early in the year. I know they kind of hit that slump in the middle of the season, but that was another true road game on the road at Arkansas. They had to play on the road at Tennessee, on the road at LSU. Those two teams proved to be top 10 caliber teams this past season. They also played Ole Miss on the road. Ole Miss was a team that was in the top 25 for most of the season. They kind of fell apart late, but you had 5 real tough road games in there. Then they also had the other games in the SEC, Texas A&M, Mississippi State, Auburn. They did kind of luck out there with Vanderbilt out of the East, but still, this was a very tough schedule, starting with Texas in the non-conference and then some really tough road games in the SEC. So how about 2023? Does it get any easier? Well, here are the games that they play outside of the division. They'll play Middle Tennessee. They'll play Texas, this time at home. They'll go on the road to face South Florida. Yes, they are going on the road to play a Group of 5 team. That is really, I think, just because of the recruiting purposes down there in Florida. I would assume that's why they're playing that road game. And then they'll have Chattanooga. So, you know, that's not a real tough non-conference slate, but Texas will be a tough game. This is probably a top 25, maybe a top 15 team this year. And then playing South Florida on the road, that gives you a game it's not a cupcake game, but South Florida's not been very good as of late, but they are playing them on the road, so I guess you never know. That game could be maybe somewhat competitive, probably not. But yeah, Texas, again, the big game in the non-conference. Of course, that'll be a conference game here soon. And then out of the East, they'll play Tennessee. They play them every year. This time they get them at home, so that's good news. And then they'll play on the road at Kentucky. Kentucky's kind of a wild card. Not sure what they're going to get with Devin Leary at the transfer quarterback from NC State. They're bringing back their offensive coordinator, Liam Cohen. So it'll be interesting to see what Kentucky looks like this year. And it kind of feels like they maybe hit their peak, and I don't know if they're going to really be able to take that next jump. So they'll be a good team, but and on the road, I guess you never know. But that's one to watch there. Alabama on the road at Kentucky. It seems like they've played Kentucky several times in recent years. They've rarely played Georgia in the regular season. I'm not really sure. Maybe I'm remembering wrong. It seems like they played Kentucky a lot. So let's go back to the full schedule here. Let's take a look at the full schedule. They'll open up on September 2nd with a home game against Middle Tennessee. So a nice, easy way to start the season. And then week 2, they jump in against Texas. Home game this time. Texas, though, will be good. I mean, this will be a competitive game. I think this will be a good one early in the season. One of those big non-conference matchups. You know, some question marks for Alabama. Who's going to be their starting quarterback? How much will they get from that quarterback position now that Bryce Young is gone? That is a big-time test for them early in the year. Then they'll play that road game against South Florida after that. And then it's into SEC play. So they'll play Ole Miss on September the 23rd, playing them early in the year this time. And when you look at the schedule, that's probably what's different from. And Mississippi State, they used to always play Mississippi State very late in the year. They play them in September. So that's definitely a change up from some of the schedules we've seen in the past for Alabama. But Ole Miss there on September 23rd. So you've got two pretty challenging games there, but both at home with Texas and Ole Miss. Then it's a road game at Mississippi State. You know, not really sure what they're going to look like this next season, but that could be a tough one. Playing them on the road, we'll see. And then Texas A&M. I think that might be the toughest game on the schedule. Texas A&M has played Alabama tough the last couple of years. We've seen that, of course. And I think the Aggies will be better this year. That's a very tough place to play. Like I said, that might be the toughest game for Alabama this year because they get a lot of their big games at home. After that, they'll play Arkansas at home. Then it's Tennessee at home and LSU at home. They'll get a bye week between Tennessee and LSU. So you get 3 games in a row at home, which is it's interesting the way this schedule sets up with Mississippi State and Texas A&M 2 road games. So they have back-to-back road games, and then it's 3 straight home games. So again, it's a very interesting schedule. Playing Mississippi State in September is different. This is, and it's going to be a lot different once Texas and Oklahoma enter the SEC. I think the schedules will completely be blown up. We'll see what they look like. But yeah, Arkansas, Tennessee, LSU at home. Back-to-back revenge games there with Tennessee and LSU. I think it really bodes well for the Crimson Tide. They're going to have a bye week between those 2 games because those will likely be very emotional games. And I think Tennessee and LSU could be top 10 teams again this year. So that bye week comes at a perfect time. Then they'll play Kentucky. You, of course, look for a potential letdown on the road after those 2 big games, Tennessee and LSU. But Bama should be the better team there, of course. And then it's Chattanooga. Get a cupcake game there before the Iron Bowl. Auburn, another team that we don't really know what to expect from them at this point. But that's a road game. It's the Iron Bowl. We've seen Alabama struggle in Jordan-Hare, even going back to 2021 when Auburn really had no business playing with Alabama, and that wound up being an overtime game. So that one could be tough as well. Texas A&M, Auburn on the road. I think those are the 2 toughest road games. And then you've got some tough games there with Texas, Tennessee, and LSU. But I think overall this schedule sets up much, much better than the one in 2022. Here were some of the projections in 2022. Of course, they were 10-2. Our projection had them at 11-1. I predicted them to go 12-0. I picked this team to win the national championship in the preseason. Obviously, the schedule got to them with some very tough road games, losing to LSU and Tennessee both on the road, and they didn't even make it to the playoff. The FBI projection was at 11.3 and 1.5. That would include the SEC championship game potentially. And then the over-under was at 10.5. I didn't think there was any way this team would go 10-2. I thought they were 11-1 or 12-0, and they did find a way to lose 2 games. Which it turned out that Tennessee wound up being better than expected. LSU wound up being good. You know, they had some other games in there as well. Texas was a tough game. But now let's look ahead at the projections for 23. This is the schedule, and let's show you the scale that we'll be using. The games in the white, those are your 50-50 games where I think the spread will be less than a touchdown, 3, 4, 5 points or less, somewhere in that range. The red and the green, those are games where I think the spreads will be 20 or more. And then you have your orange and blue. Those are the games where I think the spreads will be in the double digits, 10-17, maybe up to 20 points, kind of in that range. And then the yellow and the purple, those are games where I think the spread will be about a touchdown, 6, 7, 8 points. And we'll go through and then average everything out. So let's start with the green, the games that are, I think, easy wins. They're pretty much guaranteed wins. And I think these non-conference games are just that. Middle Tennessee, South Florida, and Chattanooga. South Florida is on the road, but I mean, they have no business hanging around with Alabama. All 3 of these games, I think the spreads will be over 20. You know, Chattanooga, that one could be in the 30s. So those are easy wins. No real struggle at all, I think, in those 3 games. Then you go to the games in the blue. You got a lot of these games: Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Arkansas, and Kentucky. I think they'll be favored by double digits in all 4 of these games. Ole Miss playing at home, you know, that one will be closer to 10 probably. Really, all of these are going to be closer to 10 than they are 20. These are quality teams in the SEC, but again, Alabama just with a big advantage in talent, and Vegas always likes the Crimson Tide, so I do expect them to be double-digit favorites against Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Arkansas, and Kentucky. But you never know, one of these teams could be a surprise team. You know, Kentucky could wind up being a top 10, top 15 team, and that would obviously change that. But looking at what is expected from these teams right now, I think these games probably, again, will be games where Alabama is favored by 10 or more points. So we count those as wins. The blue and the green games, we count those as wins, and then we'll average everything else out. So how about games in the purple? Really, that's the rest of the schedule here. I think Alabama is going to be favored by about a touchdown in the rest of their games. Texas A&M on the road. Because Tennessee and LSU are at home, I do expect Alabama to be favored in both of those games by 6 or 7 points. Auburn on the road, the Iron Bowl is always tough. And you never know what Auburn's going to look like with Hugh Freeze. That's a tough one right now to try to predict where the spread would be. It could be one where it's in double digits for sure. But if Auburn makes some improvements, playing in Jordan-Hare, the Iron Bowl, I think you can probably put that one around 8 or 9 points potentially. And then there's Texas at the beginning of the year. Texas played on tough last year, but it is at home this year. So I do think Alabama will be favored in every single game that they play. But you've got, I think, 5 games here that are going to be tough. These are games that Alabama could potentially lose. And when you average them out, so we use 65% for these games, out of those 5 games, that means that they would lose a couple of them. They would go 3-2 in those 5 games, and that's going to give you a projection of 10-2. So a 10-2 projected record for Alabama. Again, with these games, yes, they'll be favored, but when you have that many tough games, 5 tough games right there, the odds would tell you that they're going to lose 1 or 2 of those games. And with a new quarterback, a lot of question marks around this team, it would not shock me at all to see them lose 2 games again this season. It wouldn't surprise me, though, if they went 12-0 either, just because they have Nick Saban as their head coach. But it's a pretty tough schedule, and I think you could potentially see them lose a couple of games. Again, the projection for them, 10-2 in 2023.